Here we go. We're live.
We are live. A special edition of the Five Stack on a Friday because Olga Lautman is joining Dean and me. Welcome to the show, the top five stories of the day with Olga Lautman joining us. And it's going to be a good time because it's Friday. Even though the news is so chaotic, it's kind of unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to pick the top five stories of the day when there's so many crazy things going on. And we want to hear from you wherever you are on the chat, on Substack Live. Let us know what you think of all the stories we're going through and your thoughts. How's your week been, Olga?
Chaotic, I think.
Yeah,
We're back to Trump years, so every day feels like a year. A week is like 7 years. So
true.
he's been in office, what now? 20 years, it feels like.
It does feel
So
like it's the
yeah.
longest 6 weeks I've ever experienced. And of course, Dean Blundell. It's so good to have both of you in one place because it's my favorite people on the stack or anywhere else. So it's good to introduce you both to each other. And Dean, how's your week been?
Yeah, really good. It's even better now because I get to hang out with you. Obviously, I love hanging out with you. But
Yeah,
Olga Lautman
she's
is one of
amazing.
my favorite Substack followers. I joined Substack like a week ago, and I'm in like an Olga Lautman freak. So
You know
Thank
thank
why?
you.
Because
you,
she's
Olga.
the real deal. She's the real deal. She's been
Do you
doing
Dude,
like
it.
my
she's
ranting?
the Kremlin Files, the work that she's doing, what she has to keep track of. I asked her before we got on, and you heard this, and I want to bring this up for everybody else. I'm like, so do you need counseling or?
And my secret is yes, I do one day. And the way I do therapy is by having like a weekend binge of like Real Housewives to
Yeah,
clean my brain out.
yeah, Selling Sunset, maybe like old school, a Will Ferrell movie. I find sometimes takes you out of that. But the work that you do has been so prescient for so long, and I came to you through Zev, and I got to tell you, you are spectacular. I'm really
Thank
grateful
you,
to be
thank
here with you today. Yeah, thank you.
And
thank you,
both of
thank
you,
you.
both of
We're
you are
all
amazing. I'm glad you're both here. Let's do it. It's the top five stories of the day. The number five story. Let's start with the one with the maps. The New York Times reporting today that in a conversation between Trudeau and Trump actually said that he wants to redraw the borders of the Canadian-U.S. border, and he wants the Great Lakes and Southern Ontario. I mean, Dean, this is really your part of the world. It can't get nuttier than this, but this is Trump, the emperor, wanting to be building an empire.
I gotta ask you guys a couple questions before I get to what I think of this. But why are we not laughing at how dumb this MF is at this point? Like, I read that today, and we put out a piece on Substack, which you can see, Dean Blundell Substack, about his plan to redraw the 49th parallel and his plan to absorb Southern Ontario and the economic engine of Canada, which is Toronto. You got about 5.5, 6 million people here, 15.5 million people in Ontario. The majority of them live specifically in a line that he, with a Sharpie drew all the way across from New York all the way over to one of the Great Lakes. And the good news is that he doesn't want all of Canada, apparently. He only wants a few Great Lakes and Southern Ontario. But it was so ridiculous because of the treaties of 1908, the demarcation line that has, it's been around for well over 100 years, and how ridiculous. Like, I read that today, and we put out a piece on it, and I thought to myself, this guy's legitimately crazy. And we know he's crazy, but crazy to the point where common sense doesn't make any sense to him at all. And the funny part was we heard about this because of a colorful phone call through Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump, where Donald Trump literally called, screaming, swearing, F you, take the deal, take the deal. JD Vance is on the other end of the phone saying something about humping couches. And they're screaming at Justin Trudeau. And they're like, hey, dude, here's the deal. We're going to take Southern Ontario. And he's like, no. And he goes, "Oh yeah, well we're gonna target your dairy at 250% tariffs." And they're like, "Okay." And then they said, "Now get rid of some of the retaliatory tariffs, and we'll maybe shrink the tariff package." And Justin Trudeau's like, "No." And so what's happened over the past couple of days is the crazy keeps getting crazier. And I said this to a friend of mine today, Olga. I would love your thoughts as well. I said, I don't know why we're even taking this guy seriously at this point. I mean, we report on him because it's so insane, moving borders and annexing countries and invading Greenland. But like at some point in time, Olga, we all have to start laughing at this dickhead, do we not?
I agree, except that I think that honestly, to me, he is acting identical to Putin.
Mm.
Who redrew maps of Ukraine? Putin. And the Russian military, like 20 years ago, then 15 years ago. And this is what worries me because he really admires his boss and he is literally using the same playbook, except in a more blunt and, blatant way of threatening to take country. So, will the US invade Canada? I hope to God not. Um, but I wouldn't take it off the table because with this guy, you never know. And I mean, frankly, I wouldn't even put it past that he joins forces with Russia for this because better than anyone. I mean, Russia has been working, what, over a decade to destabilize Canada, just like the US, trying to split the far left, the far right, polarize the country. Luckily, Trump came along, and I've never seen Canadians so united. I mean, the one
It's
thing
true.
that Trump managed to do and wipe out over a decade of Russia's operations, and suddenly, I mean, like the majority of Canadians are like, America, back up. We don't want you. We don't want to be part of you. We'll come visit now, no more. But like, back up. So, but I worry with that because I mean, this is such a Putin move. And you
Mhm.
see it even, to this day. He keeps rewriting maps of Ukraine and keeps putting even territory that they haven't invaded or that they haven't occupied in full. So that's my worry about that.
There's an
But
answer
Yeah,
yeah,
to
and
your
he's
question.
crazy.
There's an answer to your
yeah, no,
question, Gene. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
please. Yeah, go
And
ahead.
it's got to do with nuclear weapons. And at the end of the show, because it's the number one story, it's all about nuclear weapons and deterrence for these guys. And I'll explain why coming up. That's just a tease for later on. It's the number four story, which is the crypto conspiracy. This is unless you want to keep talking about that. If there's anything else you want to keep saying, we can. But if not, I'll move to number four. Okay, number four, crypto conspiracy. So, they had a meeting today at the White House about starting a strategic reserve for cryptocurrency, which will mean basically the United States taxpayer buying 1 million bitcoins and not touching it for 20 years, regardless of its value. It would mean just keeping it in the reserve, whatever that it might mean, for 20 years.
Yep.
Basically, this would reduce the size of the amount of available Bitcoin in the world, which means that the price will go up for Bitcoin, which means that the people who bought Bitcoin originally, which is people like Elon Musk and David Sachs, and of course Donald Trump will benefit from this too, are the real winners here because the people who get in first with Bitcoin are the people who are going to make the most money when it all comes crashing down. And so this is just a way to use taxpayer money to increase the price of Bitcoin so that these guys can get richer, while at the same time, they're firing people left, right, and center in the federal government and cutting Social Security and potentially Medicaid. This is the most unbelievably unfair, corrupt thing I've ever seen. And it's the third time now that we've noticed that they're making these announcements in order to basically increase the price of crypto, even temporarily, so they can profit off it. It's called a rug pull. You told me about it the other day, Dean. And there's also, other people call it a pump and dump. But they've done it three times now. They've done it with the announcement of the crypto czar. They did it with a meme coin. You remember the meme coins before the inauguration that
Trump,
both Trump
Melania.
and
Yeah,
Melania did?
yeah.
And now they've done it a third time with the announcement of this crypto reserve, which is not yet a thing. It's just a suggestion. But every time they talk about it, because it's getting closer to being a thing, it increases the price of crypto. They sell when it's high. They make a lot of money. And it's the most corrupt thing you've ever seen in your life. There's no reason in the world to be having a reserve of crypto because we don't need it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a podcast today with a guy named Scott McGregor, Scotty Mack, who's a great guy. He's a crypto educator and investment guy. So he's one of those guys that kind of found a niche because he's a stock market mentor, and he found a niche to be able to kind of tell people what they could invest in when it came to Bitcoin or crypto and what they shouldn't, what to stay away from, what you can, because the technology is really bulletproof in terms of sending money around the world. The problem is because the technology is bulletproof from sending money around the world, only international criminals really take advantage of the tech. Russia, North Korea, drug dealers, sex traffickers, that kind of stuff. So, like the scams are one thing, the legitimacy is another thing. But what Donald Trump is effectively doing is finding a way to take neutral taxpayer money. That's an interesting way of saying, well, we'll find money in and around taxpayer money, which is essentially taxpayer money. Find money in and around taxpayer money to be able to really kind of corner the market when it comes to Bitcoin specifically. They've got another carve out for crypto, which is different, but Bitcoin specifically because, you know, Elon Musk or Satoshi back in the day decided that he was going to put out this coin and he was going to birth this from nothing and it's going to be 21,000 Bitcoins and that's it. It's scarce. It's all, which is all bullshit. And if you listen to the podcast today, you'll really get a great understanding of what this means. But what it means is that the United States wants to legitimately control the way money is moved around the world, and it's not just the United States wants to control it. The United States, prior to the last 48 days or however long Trump has been in office at this point, was very bullish on how ridiculous this was because it wasn't related to fiat money or any gold reserves or anything like that. And so the real move here, which I find interesting, and Olga, maybe you can shed some light on this, the real move here that I find interesting is that you've got this competing faction of the New Deal and then people that want gold, precious metals, and crypto to be the new national reserve. They want to replace the New Deal, which is 70, 80 years old, because you can just print money and say you got it. And they want to hold. So Elon, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, that entire cabal, they hold the most Bitcoin and the most precious metal commodities in the world, in and around them and their relationships. So, you look at this two ways, the tech, or three ways really. The tech is good, but the bottom line is that because they're at the front of the line and they've got the taxpayer bank card, they can enrich themselves by getting in on every single global transaction if crypto or Bitcoin does become the Federal Reserve. And that's the dangerous part right there, in my opinion. And Olga, I'd love your thoughts too.
Well, I know very little about crypto, except that Russia uses it to launder money, fund terrorist operations around the globe, and to fund other malign influence operations like subverting democracies. I have watched a pattern that Eric Trump continues putting out posts, and I mean, they're blatantly manipulating the market. He puts out a post, whatever ETH is going to be, watch ETH, it's going to go up. Suddenly, it goes up, and then, it's just market manipulation in plain sight.
And is that
Um,
even insider trading? That's just like outsider trading.
I
That's
don't
just
even know
telling.
what that is.
It should
It's
be
like
illegal.
everything else.
It's not
Well, it
regulated.
is illegal. It is
Yeah.
illegal, but that market is largely so. If you do that on the stock market, you've got SEC guys, the FBI showing up at your house, and they are taking you away in cuffs. You do that with crypto or Bitcoin, nothing.
Nothing happens,
But
especially because they.
they're doing it, and no
Yeah.
one's doing a thing. And now they own all the agencies, so I don't foresee even if it was illegal for anyone. But so they're definitely doing it to enrich themselves and their family and their cronies. My worry is that foreign governments can pay them. And no one can trace the money back. So you could have Russia injecting billions of dollars straight to, Trump via crypto, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and that's it. And then another interesting comment off of crypto that I saw yesterday was now Trump and his crazies are spreading the
Oops. So we lost you there for a second. While we get you back, Olga, someone's
could be
asking what's the. Oh,
missing.
there, you're back. You're back. We
He
missed you there
said
for the last
Trump
two
and his
Ah,
seconds.
crazies are spreading, and then we lost you.
someone's spreading conspiracies. Trump and his cronies.
Oh, there you
Well,
go.
Okay, so
Still can't hear you. Maybe your microphone's off right now. I don't
the
know if.
golden
Oh, there
Fort
you go.
Knox
Now you're
may
back.
be
Yeah.
missing. Can you hear
The
me?
Fort Knox got.
yeah.
Yeah. What happened to that? They were going to show this
I
that
don't
last
know,
week.
but my point is that they're robbing the country or preparing to rob the country.
They absolutely are. And what's going to happen with crypto is this price of crypto is going to keep climbing until it gets so high, and then they will tank it. And then who'll be holding the bag is the average taxpayer. That's the reality of where we'll be, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's a real Ponzi scheme when you think about it. We don't need crypto. We have a reserve for oil, we have a reserve for a lot of things, but we don't need crypto. We don't need a reserve of it. So we'll see what happens. And this bill that they're trying to push through of 20 years is nonsense. We cut you off there. I don't know if you go, Olga, if you want to keep going, because I interrupted your fuzzy signal, but now you're back. So do you want to?
No, I'm saying that their ultimate scheme is to basically, like in Russia, siphon all our resources, steal everything from this country. And frankly, that comment that Trump made about the gold in Fort Knox is kind of uncomfortable because, I mean, what are they planning? Are they going to steal now America's gold too? Transfer to Russia's central bank like Maduro did back in the day
Oh, he
when he
did.
transferred his gold. To Russia's central bank to store. It was,
Maduro
I
did
believe,
that.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, that's interesting. That sets up the whole
That's why
thing.
Russia sent like four of those Tupolev planes
Yeah.
to to pick up all of the Venezuelan
I
gold.
believe it went to Dubai. Like we were
Oh
all
yeah.
sitting at the time. There was a whole host of us watching the plane leaving.
So they keep on
Uh, but
teasing. They keep teasing us that this Fort Knox gold is gone. It could be that it is gone, and that it's all the way in the Moscow right now or somewhere.
it could be.
It
So
could
I
be.
mean,
I
with
mean,
these
wow.
crazy, so who knows? All
Tell
I
people
do
about
know is they want to steal everything.
It's
That's
a
it.
real
They
Doge move, though, isn't it? Like that's a real Doge move
the
where
Doge
you're like,
move.
"Hey,
It is.
you
douche
can't see
move.
behind the curtain. You can't see behind the curtain." But we think they did this, and then they'll make that assertion or assessment publicly, and then they'll go, "Oh, they did it." Meanwhile, it was them who did it.
Yeah, yeah, it
They
is.
did the shit.
Of course, that's the way they do it. That's the way
Mhm.
this is the way Russians, this is the way Putin operates everywhere. And tell people about David Sachs, Olga, because you know a lot about him. How did he suddenly transform into a Russian, mouthpiece over the last few years? Because he never used to be. But then suddenly 2 years ago, you discovered that he only started his his adherence to Russian propaganda 2 years ago.
I never heard of him in my life. This is not my world, the crypto world. In February of 2022, I suddenly he started popping up on my feed and spewing Russian disinformation propaganda. Ukrainians are Nazis and all the garbage they were pushing. And I'm like, who is this guy? And I kept seeing him do it. I've gotten into multiple Twitter fights with him. Um, and then I looked to see like who is he? What is he doing? Why is he doing this? I did a scrub of his Twitter before January of 22, he never mentioned the word Russia or Ukraine. So clearly he's on Russia's payroll, and they must have approached him somewhere in January to start, spreading the disinformation. And then, I mean, he spent it as his full-time job all day. I've never heard of an American. It's like me. I focus on Russia. Imagine like tomorrow you start seeing me like spread propaganda from morning to night, 30 tweets a day on Peru. Like, you'll be like, what happened to her? Where did this come from? I mean, this is the same thing. He's an American. He has nothing to do with the region. South African, I believe.
Yeah, South African
Has
born.
nothing to do with Eastern Europe. For him to spend the whole day just devoted to spreading Russian disinformation, I mean, clearly someone got to him and purchased him,
Yeah,
probably
and this is
via crypto.
Yeah, it's also part of that PayPal mafia. It's really strange how so many of them are South Africans, but not just South Africans. South Africans associated with the apartheid government, way back when. It's just this very strange breed of person that seems to have survived and thrived in this world, and they've made a lot of money off that in the meantime. So it's quite gross what's going on with that PayPal mafia, but they certainly are a force to be reckoned with. So we are going to talk about Ukraine. We're going to talk about Ukes, but the golden visas that they've been touting. Trump says he thinks. I'm going to pull this off for a second here so you can see properly. Oops. No, what did I do? Did I lose you guys? Uh-oh. I thought that might
Where'd he
happen.
go? Where did he
Come
go?
back.
No
I'm
way to
There
here. I'm
you
here.
go.
I'm
go.
here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I want to show you
Is this
something.
one of
Let's see
those
if this works. Maybe
podcasts
this
where
will
you're
work.
like, you got to take your phone with you to the bathroom
Well,
and
because
start
I
screenshotting?
can't show graphics, so I want to show graphics, and
Okay,
I'm
okay.
graphic addicted. So they say they've got 250,000 of these people who have got $5 million applying for their golden visa. These are the visas you got to pay $5 million, and you become a green card holder. So I crunched the numbers. I was like, wait a
Gold
second.
card
A
holder.
gold card holder, gold card. Sorry. So I crunched the numbers about how many people in the close alliance that supports Donald Trump, how many people in those countries have $5 million or more, and these are the numbers. In Russia, there are approximately, these are very rough because we can't get the actual numbers, but in Russia, 62,000 people have $5 million or more. In China, 94,000 people have $5 million or more. In India, 85,000 people have have $5 million or more. And in Saudi Arabia, 37,000 people have $5 million or more, adding up to 279,000. It makes me wonder whether these 250,000 people that are supposedly applying to be Americans, whether they actually got that from just adding up who has $5 million or more amongst their allies, because it's not going to be evenly applied to anybody. It's just going to be a way for people to buy their green cards.
It's literally the dumbest shit I've ever heard come out of that dumb shit's mouth. Like, the other day he said he figures he can find 10 million people. 10 million people who'd be willing. So there's two parts to this. Not only is his math way off, as you've just pointed out,
Yeah.
10 million people to give him $5 million to become an American citizen, to enjoy the milk and the honey of America. But he is literally targeting people who have worked their asses off, paid into Social Security, who have kept that country afloat, targeting those people to send them out of the country, to bring in people who've had $5 million. This is nothing about patriotism. Nothing. This has nothing to do with America. This has got nothing to do with the fabric of that country. This has got nothing to do with him deciding that he wants to change the demographics of that country. This is specifically a dog whistle and a cash grab for Donald Trump and all his pals to tell everybody around the world, hey, you can buy your way into America, which is something he is throwing billions of dollars trying to police, to tell people they can't buy
It's
their way
crazy.
into
It's
America.
crazy.
It is
It's
the most
crazy.
fucking
It's like
hypocritically
we're gonna
ass backward, terrible math thing I have
yeah.
ever fucking seen.
Yeah, we're going to build a wall, but then we're going to invite people to buy their way in here. I mean, it just tells you everything about his policies. It's disgusting stuff.
I'll,
And
I'll I'll just add that for people who remember the first term around,
mm,
while Kushner was in office, his brother was in China selling visas to
true,
US.
his
Same
sister.
thing, I think
Yeah,
it was called the Golden Visa.
yeah.
Or his brother or his sister or his family members. They did a conference in China. So basically, this goes on par with everything else that Trump does. People around him were selling pardons on his way out. They're selling, visas now. And it was interesting enough that the first thing, that in this his example, oh, and I get along very well with Russian oligarchs. I'm sure you do. They floated you. So you could just imagine how many of these sanctioned Russian oligarchs are going to be buying
That's
themselves a
but
US
when I started figuring
citizenship.
this out, I wanted to see how many oligarchs were actually going to be applying, because it seems to me that Putin's just taking his oligarch crew and just giving them away to become US citizens by, a lot of them have $5 million. And if they don't, he'll spot them, I'm sure. And he'll just
Oh,
send
yeah.
all these oligarchs over to be American
He'll send
citizens
a
now.
whole branch of SVR, the Foreign
Yeah.
Intelligence Services, and the
So they're
Military
indistinguishable
Intelligence
from,
Service,
yeah, from the
and
oligarchs.
Foreign Security Services. You'll have all of them lining up to buy these visas. This is what's
Yeah,
going
and
to
of
happen.
course, Trump wants all these guys over here because, hey, they become Americans, they become American citizens, they make the inequalities in America even worse. But it is, other than the Russians, I mean, I don't know if MAGA Americans realize that the bulk of these people spending $5 million are going to be coming from China and India, and not from, from the places he was promising in his election campaign, from Sweden or Norway, wherever he was promising to get Americans from. So, so much for the white nationalists' attempt at electing Trump and making America, whiter again. That's not going to happen.
No, you know what? The fatal mistake, right? Where he was like, "Hey, we're going to ban Muslims from coming into the country."
Yeah,
Like, what was that, 8, 10 years ago? And now he's like, "All right, if Muslims have $5 million, you
yeah,
can
they could
come
come.
into the country."
If they're Saudi Muslims, then they could definitely
That
come.
that'll be interesting because they're about to do another Muslim ban
Oh,
by next week. So it'll be interesting if it includes the language. Unless you have 5 million and want to buy a visa, you're banned.
Is there
it's
anything
interesting. His
more
first,
Trump than that, though? Like, is there
uh,
anything more Trump than, "Hey, listen, my
uh,
principles don't matter as long as you've got $5 fucking million"? Pardon my
yeah,
language.
he'll sell anything. I mean, it's not that he'll just sell his mother; he'll sell your mother. He's so like he's just sell everybody's everything for no matter what.
Dude,
He'll
he's selling Bibles. He's
Yeah.
he's selling hats out of the White House from the Oval Office. Like, it's just great.
It's so gross. It's so gross. This is the most powerful office in the world, or supposedly so. It's what was really gross out of the Oval Office today was his comments about Ukraine. It's bad enough that he bullied the guy, and Zelensky had to deal with this ordeal last Friday or whenever it was. It feels like a lifetime ago. But then today, again, having um, yesterday, I guess he told the major aerospace company that provides the Ukrainian forces with satellite imagery. This is life
Maxar.
saving.
Maxar is the name
Yeah,
of the
Maxar.
company. Yeah.
This is satellite imagery that's really saving lives, and he's helping Ukraine defend freedom. He's helping Ukraine defend democracy and our values and everything else that we stand for in the West. He pulls their ability to get these satellite images and he orders this company, which is supposedly a private company, but obviously tied to the Pentagon, tells them to stop sending and making these pictures available to them. So it's not only that he does that terrible thing and makes them even more vulnerable against this big army, it's that he also then today still says that he's having a hard time with the Ukrainians, and he sort of took a lot of joy in the notion that Russia was attacking Ukraine today
Yeah.
because of this vulnerability, and just really was an awful day for Ukrainians in general. But I mean, you must have some thoughts on this, Olga. It's the way he said it is just I don't know. I can't think of
That's
adjectives anymore.
exactly that. I took to Twitter exactly to say that he's a sociopath. Who really, like, was discussing. Oh, and Russia now has escalated their bombings, and he looks so happy about it. I'm like, my God, I'm shocked he's not volunteering to run to Russia to help them, bomb even more. I mean, the whole thing is gross. They forced Zelensky into an ambush last Friday. This was all planned to cut the military, to cut the intelligence sharing, to, threaten, which is interesting, to basically threaten the Five Eyes not to provide intelligence to Ukrainians, U.S. intelligence. Interestingly enough, a story came out yesterday that the Five Eyes in Israel and Saudi Arabia are discussing whether or not to share intelligence with the United States because of the likes of Tulsi Gabbard and because of Trump's cozying up to Putin. So, I mean, that's definitely interesting. Look, my bottom line, and I've said it, too, in Ukraine and here and everywhere. Ukraine and Europe need to forget about the United States. We're right now held hostage. We are not an ally. At a minimum, we'll not pay attention to what's happening. At a maximum, we could become an enemy to Europe and to Canada and to, our traditional allies. So right now, Ukrainians, honestly, I don't understand why they're meeting next week with the Trump officials in, Saudi Arabia. Trump injected himself as if he's the only one who can end these negotiations. I mean, end this war. First of all, he's screaming at Ukraine. Putin can right now, put out a message and say war over and recall all his troops back over the border. So
He could just stop
he's just
launching these
discussing. It's
attacks. It's just,
Yeah,
he's accelerating things, making things worse. I mean, if they really are serious about negotiating peace, why are they making
because he
they?
doesn't want to negotiate
He
peace.
doesn't
He
really, yeah.
is extremely angry, and you saw the anger because Zelensky is refusing to capitulate Ukraine to Russia. Or to him. And like I said, if Zelensky or Ukrainians wanted to surrender, they don't need Trump and his team. They can go
So
directly to Putin and
Mhm.
surrender to Putin. And here, this is the only objective for Trump is to try to force Ukraine to surrender. Now he's, ramped it up a few notches by basically removing, shutting off weapons and Patriot system and satellite intelligence and satellite sharing to make it even more bloody for Ukrainians. So they're both Putin put them through this, and the Russians for the past 11 years and 3 years across the whole country. So I mean they don't need Trump to surrender. And that's it. And in the process, being a corrupt asshole, he's trying to basically he called extort minerals in the process. On top of having them surrender to Russia, we want to steal your minerals.
So I'm so glad that you. I love Olga Lautman. Have I said that yet? Have
You
I
have.
brought that
I'll
up? I'm
second
a big
that.
Olga Lautman guy. Um, the you touch on a couple of things, and I want to kind of go over them real quick because I find this entire scenario fascinating. Where a country can have allies for 80 years, a country can support another country for 4 years to the tune of 113, 115 billion dollars, and then within a 45, 48 day period, that can change so dramatically and so drastically. And what I find fascinating about this, which is really kind of the overarching theme here, is and we can get into FSB and whether or not Agent Krasnov is really Agent Krasnov, which we know he is. But what I find fascinating here is that Donald Trump has effectively, and I saw a quote today, has effectively to try to get Vladimir Zelensky to grovel. And because his character was impugned in the Oval Office last week, because someone actually fact checked him on national television, he greenlit Russia to, which is going on right now, to fire ICBMs at a rate not seen yet in this war, drones not seen yet in this war, at different parts of Ukrainian infrastructure that have nothing to do with infrastructure. I'm talking people, attacking
Yeah,
hotels with aid workers, attacking apartment buildings, attacking civilians, something Ukraine has never done once. Never done once. And this fight is all on Ukrainian territory, all of it, save the drones that are blowing up petrol stations in different parts of Russia. They're going after their ability to attack Ukraine. That's what Ukraine's going after. Russia is going after Ukrainian families, human beings, people, aid workers, hospitals. In Zelensky's hometown yesterday, they bombed a hotel that was the home for international aid workers, reporters, et cetera, et cetera. And for Donald Trump to sit there in the Oval Office and go, yeah, Russia has all the cards to play, Ukraine has none,
yeah.
is
Trump
not
gave them
only a
the cards.
misstep,
Trump gave them the
it's
cards.
engineered, to your point. It's not a misstep.
Yeah,
It's engineered. He basically greenlit this. He stopped sharing intelligence with them, and you know what happens when the U.S. stops giving Ukraine access. And this is interesting, and I think a lot of people have to tune into this. You stop giving them access to early detection warnings for drones and ICBMs. That's what happened. So now Russia is pounding the shit out of Ukraine, and Donald Trump is gleefully going, Russia's pretty mad. You're
hmm
gonna. But here's the other part, which I find fascinating too,
Classic mob move.
is that we have a Ukrainian people who are blindly flying this airplane, trying to figure out how to protect everybody in that country. And Donald Trump and the US government, with every piece of military equipment they sell, can actually brick that military equipment from the United States. So you're looking at like a nightmare scenario for Ukraine, like a nightmare scenario where they've
Can I
shut off
add
the eye in the
something?
sky. Please, yeah.
No, finish your thought. Then I want to add something on
Well,
that.
no, they cut off the eye in the sky. They cut off intelligence sharing. And not only that, they've effectively, from my understanding from people that are in Ukraine, from Kaylin Robinson to Alex de Rebekov, who works for the ICC in Kyiv, lives in Bucha, did an interview with him yesterday. My understanding is that the American war machine, when they sell things to people, they can actually hit an off switch for every piece of equipment they sell. So
Mm.
that's why they can't fire any anti-aircraft anything at any ICBMs, at any drones, anything like that. So effectively, America has geofenced all the equipment that they put into Ukraine, and they're forcing Ukrainians to die so Zelensky can grovel at the feet of Donald Trump's ego. That's the sickest part of this equation.
And
Wow.
that's not going to happen, I
Awesome.
can tell you, because even before the full scale invasion started, I had said, that it's coming. And trust me, when it comes to Russia, I had said it then. And I stand by my word. We will fight with broomsticks, whatever is available, not to let Russia take over. I mean, no one wants to go back under Russian occupation. That's like, going into a concentration camp. But to your point, Trump is not only assisting Putin with, attacking Ukraine, and at this point, the U.S. is aiding and abetting war crimes, but he is also going to basically tank the defense industry. Because what in the right mind country is going to buy weapons from the U.S., knowing that if Trump doesn't like what they said or what they tweeted or where they hid or they're not paying him enough, that they could shut off these weapons. And that goes to even a bigger point because, I mean, at this point, even yesterday with Israel, Israel apparently was mad. I don't deal with that part of the world, but Israel was mad because he was having secret talks with Hamas. So at this point, anybody can cross into his path. Who in their right mind are going to buy weapons from U.S.? If the U.S. can shut these weapons, and who does that help? Russia and China.
Not to mention that
So
these are jobs in America as well right now, making these weapons. And the minute they stop making these weapons, the jobs go even further. So it's so just self-defeating and so self-destructive. But
because
I
his
do think,
point is to destroy America, everything.
yeah.
Economically, he despises this country, and his whole point from every action he's taken is to destroy America.
But you know what you're saying about the Ukrainians fighting with broomsticks or whatever. I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen that the resolve amongst Ukrainians is pretty strong, and they will not. And
No,
nothing's going to stop
no,
them. They don't need America.
no.
They don't need anybody to fight for their country. They're going to be
Are
fighting
you kidding?
regardless.
There's not one Ukrainian family who doesn't have people who died during
Mm.
Holodomor, which is Stalin's famine that he killed up to 5, 7 million Ukrainians. This history is deep. There's no one who wants to go back under Russian occupation. No one. They'll zero. They'll burn the land. They'll nuke the land before they go back under Russia's occupation.
To that point, again, going back to my interview with Alex de Rebekov from Bucha today, um, we talked about Holodomor because every single Ukrainian leaves a piece of bread on their plate after they're done their meal.
Really?
And they have for 60
Yeah.
years. And the reason why they do it, 70 years, the reason why they do it is because they hate Russia that much. Because of what Stalin did, because of what Putin's doing, and they call him Putler,
What the
by the way.
Tsars did.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the bread is symbolizing what? Sorry, just say that again. What's the?
Bread is symbolizing the fact that they might not eat tomorrow.
Mm.
They might be starved out of their own country tomorrow. They might, their aunts, uncles, and relatives might die tomorrow because Stalin has choked them out. Like the Ukraine, we don't understand, and this is the other thing that I think a lot of people don't kind of tune into, Zev, Olga, with due respect, and you know this, Olga. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not, it's not the same here like it is there. Like the Ukrainian people, to Olga's point, would rather die a terrible death than not live in a free Ukraine. They don't give a shit about anything other than the fact that Russia has nothing to do with their daily lives. Russia has nothing to do with deciding where they can go, how they can grow, who they can meet, how they can get together. That's it. It is. They call them. What did he call them the other day? Barbarians. He's like they're a barbaric culture who just continue to.
One of the million words we have for them.
That's a nice word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you know,
Barbarian.
it reminds me that Americans don't know what it's like to not to have freedom, and they're going to slowly find out. But when you've lived under a police state, when you know what it's like to be living under those circumstances, you don't want to go back to that under any circumstances, and you won't. Which leads me to the number one story of the day, which is a bit of analysis more than anything else. But Olga, why don't you talk about that? Because I think it's just poignant, and I don't leave it, and then we'll go to the number one story. So what do you have anything you want to say about that last bit there about the bread and the?
Oh, no. I thought we were on the next
Holodomor is what
story.
it's called.
Okay,
No,
okay,
again, this is a centuries old fight, and Russians are war criminals. They've been like this, in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. They've always had like, it's a very sick, twisted combination of this bloody imperialist thirst with feeling like victims, with feeling superior, that they're better than any other race on this earth or ethnicity on this earth. Um, so it's a very toxic combination. It's never ended. And the Ukrainians, like I said, they'll, uh, do everything to prevent Russia from um, taking over. And also for, a lot of people tuned in 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion. But Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. And we're documenting the concentration camps that were going up in occupied territory, the tortures, the disappearances, the stealing of children. And it's not stealing children just to steal them, it's stealing children to reprogram them, to erase their Ukrainian identity and force them to grow up as Russians. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the beheadings, all the war crimes happening in Crimea, in Donbass. I mean, so this, like, we already know, for anyone who wasn't around during Stalin, what happens under Russian occupation. You have the past 11 years to show what happens. And the world got to see a glimpse of it during Bucha and Mariupol and Izium, when they saw how Russia walked in and massacred families. But didn't just massacre, they had to rape the kids, videotape raping children and putting it online. Spreading it around military channels and on Telegram. So I mean, the world got a glimpse of something that has been happening forever. Particularly since 2014, and historically, this is what's happened. So trust me, just to end, Ukrainians, Trump can go to F himself. Ukrainians are not going to, how you call it, agree to any deal. And if Zelensky even attempted to, say, okay, we're going to do this and give this and whatever, if the civil society doesn't see it's a normal deal, he will be shipped to Moscow in a bag or to America. In Ukraine, it's not like United States where, everyone looks to a leader. In Ukraine, it's the civil society who controls the country. So he's not gonna, he knows himself. He's not gonna come back and say, I agree to sell out the country. Not that he wouldn't, but if he was ever pressured to do that, because he'd be shipped right out of the country in 5 minutes.
And you know what? The fascinating, Olga, fuck, I love you. The fascinating part about that is that I think Olga's underscoring
yeah,
how much Ukrainians hate Russia with even those sentiments.
Oh, forget it. It makes
yeah,
people's
Is
blood boil.
they can't even look at a TV screen if Russia's involved. They can't. They hate Russia in Ukraine so much that every single Ukrainian I've talked to, from our correspondent in Ukraine, Alex Day Rebekov, to some of Kalen Robertson from Byline, some of his people, every single Ukrainian I've talked to, they look at you like, "Are you insane? You'd
yeah.
rather." die. Like this has nothing to do with it's Russia. It's got nothing to do with me. It's Russia. It's got nothing to do with me living. It's got to do with the land, the people, the agriculture, what we are, our culture. And I don't think people really appreciate how much older Ukraine is than Russia. I don't think people really realize the amount of culture that's in Ukraine that isn't in Russia, and how Russia for hundreds of years has been trying to co-opt other people's history and culture to talk about it like it's their own. And Ukrainians are not like, you're watching this resurgence in Canadian unity. You really are in the last couple of weeks. But in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky went from like having an approval rating of about 52 to 57% to like 67 to 80%, depending on what part of the country you're in 1 week. And it's because, and it's not dissimilar to Canada. It's because it doesn't matter if you're in Ukraine and you don't like Volodymyr Zelensky. He's the representation of freedom in that country. And even their opposition parties, the opposing parties who met with Trump this week, told Trump to go pound sand because they're like, hey, dude, like, this has nothing to do with you, dickhead. This has everything to do with Russia, who for hundreds of years has been trying to be our daddies. And we're fucking tired of it. We're
Yep.
sick of it to the point where we will give our lives for future generations. And again, another thing people don't realize, Ukraine has the biggest army in Europe outside of Russia. And they're well equipped and they're really smart and they've got technology and a drone ecosystem on their side that nobody else does. 85% of Russian casualties come from
And they're not
drones.
gonna and they're not gonna drink the gasoline or siphon the gasoline out of their tanks as they're entering to invade a country. They're
Well, that's
actually,
because Russians are a bunch of weirdo alcoholics, right?
yeah,
So they
they're
Look, Russia is the epitome of the axis of evil, and that's what we're dealing with here. I'm going to segue slightly into this last bit here because I do want to explain to people what is driving Donald Trump's confidence in all of this. It used to be that the world had a balance, well, of the last 70 years or so, has had a balance of power based on the fact that we had nuclear deterrence, right? At some point, the amount of nukes on the Russia-Chinese side equal the amount of nukes that America and the other side has. And that basically is how we've avoided this major world confrontation. The weird poker game that Xi and Putin and Trump are now playing is that, okay, if they take all of America's nukes and add it to the column of Russia and China, well, then they're the big boys in the playing field and they can do whatever they want. And it's true. I mean, look, the numbers actually do bear this out from a nukes perspective. If you can see that, that's the way it used to be. China, Russia, North Korea, 6,230 to America and the rest of the world, 6,107. Now it looks like this. If the United States joins in with China and Russia, you've got 11,000 warheads, nuclear warheads on one side, almost 12,000, compared to 939 on the other side. And that is why they're acting with the kind of brutality and the kind of insensitivity that they are, because they think that this is enough. They think that this is enough for them to tell the entire world what to do. What this doesn't take into account is you don't need this many nuclear weapons to actually cause any damage,
only
number
one.
one. And number two is, what are you going to do when the people who you're trying to kill are outside your offices and outside your palaces and outside your houses of parliament trying to get to you? Are you going to send a nuclear bomb to destroy them too? Because it'll kill you as well. Nuclear bombs are great for deterrence around the world. You can deter a foreign country far away from you from sending a big nuclear weapon against you because you've got one. But when you're dealing with people who are really unhappy with you, who are tired and sick and tired of you raiding their Social Security, who are tired of you raiding their Medicaid, who are tired of you firing their federal workers and their neighbors and their colleagues, and who's made the price of eggs so high that people are buying eggs now by the single egg. Now you can buy a single egg at a bodega because the prices are so high. Now you're talking about people getting really angry with you about how you're leading them. And it's got nothing to do with the math of who has got lots of nuclear weapons or not. And I think this whole bravado that Donald Trump has is all based on this nukes argument. And this nukes argument is bogus. It's not going to win the day. At the end of the day, the people are going to win the day. And none of us No, any country in the world, anywhere, is going to stand for this for very much longer. I don't think it really has gotten to the point where the people are beginning and need to start, if they haven't started yet, are beginning to find a way to, to talk truth to power in the way we protest these things.
You know, it's. I'm really glad we all agreed on the nuclear deterrent, meaning that we only needed one nuke.
Yes.
That's it, just one nuke.
Yeah.
You can have 12 million nukes. And by the way, if Russia has several thousand nukes, I can guarantee you those nukes are in the condition that their army vehicles are in, which is not great.
Yeah.
So there's that.
I
But
used to joke, sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
before the full scale invasion, people are like, oh, but Russia's a nuclear power. I'm like, are you kidding? If they send nukes, it's going to go from all the corruption and everything, it'll go back into Siberia. It'll be
do you
like,
know how
oops,
many? Do
wrong
you know how many of
way.
those
So,
like those anti-aircraft videos I watch in Russia, where a Russian anti-aircraft missile gets set off and it flies right into the apartment building next door? Like,
yes,
honest to
yes.
God, like the
The
columns of
planes crash
Russian
into each other.
machinery, the columns of Russian machinery that went into Ukraine around Kiev that stopped because all the tires exploded because no one bothered to fucking fill the tires up. I mean, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, you need one,
Yeah.
and you can have a like a pissing match with anybody over nukes. Sure, great. You got all those. I got all these. I just need to launch one, or we need to be hit with one, and the world changes. And nobody outside of Putin, and I don't even think he's this dumb because he knows what'll happen. The second one person launches one, whoever launches that thing, the free world is going to collapse them with the same response. So, like, it's such a fucking stupid argument when
Yeah.
anybody's like, "Well, we've got 6,000 nukes, you got
Yeah.
993." It was like, it doesn't matter,
Just need one.
dummy.
Yeah. I love the line Terry Lynn's got here that Russian nukes will deploy like Elon's rockets.
Exactly.
Well done.
Exactly.
Well done.
They'll,
Speaking of
they'll
Elon,
blow up over
I just want to bring
Siberia.
this up. I just want to bring this up, and
Yeah.
I tweeted this today. Is Tesla? And I used to have a Tesla. I got rid of it months ago when this stuff happened.
Yeah. Well
Is
done.
it is it the is it like a MAGA hat on wheels?
It is. It's like, it is. It's like honestly, I know people in my family who've got a Tesla and they're dead embarrassed about driving around in those things.
I
It is like
wouldn't.
walking around with those big giant red caps. I mean, it
Yeah.
Dude, I
seriously
was
is.
watching some guy drive down Main Street where I live today. Give
Yeah.
a Tesla the finger just because the guy was driving a Tesla, and I'm like, oh, the Tesla's the new MAGA hat. Now I get it.
It
Now,
is the MAGA hat, yep. And someone pointed out Germany. I put in my tyranny tracker. Um, 78 or 76% of Germans in February didn't buy Tesla because of Elon interfering in their elections. So I mean, the
79%
Tesla
of
movement is real, and I believe Boston. Not that I would advocate, but in Boston, I think a few Tesla dealerships were set on fire. In New York, people were arrested over the weekend for, going and protesting, and I think they broke the windows of the Tesla dealership. And I mean, we're having nationwide Tesla, um, how you call it,
Protest.
protest. So
Yeah.
yes, it is the new MAGA hat, and it's the new of everything that is wrong with this timeline.
Don't forget, everything he's done is leveraged against each other. So, if Tesla goes, his ownership of Twitter goes, so does his ownership of SpaceX. It's all one big Ponzi
You
scheme.
would think
And it's got
you'd worry about
cryptocurrency in
that.
there too. So, we'll see. He might go down.
I don't know if you saw him at the State of the Union, Olga, when you say you'd think he'd worry about that. That guy is so fucking cranked on drugs. He's not
Yeah.
I
worried about
know that's the
Yeah.
anything.
problem.
He
Nothing.
really is. That was incredible. At the State of the Union, you're going to the Congress, you're going to get called out on national TV and you can't keep your eyes straight.
No,
You know?
he's like this. "Ooh." Yeah,
You're like,
no,
wait
he's nuts.
well, there you go. That's a good place
And
to end it.
anyone else would need
Yeah.
to take a drug test in the government.
Well,
I
that's why
mean,
that's why
except
he couldn't pass a security clearance or a drug test to get a job in
no,
the U.S. federal government. Yet he's firing everybody. Give me a break.
yeah.
That's the five stack for today. Thank you very much, Olga Lautman from Unmasking Russia. If you are not following her yet, you should. And at it's Dean Blundell from deanblundell.com and crier.co and his own Substack. Dean, thank you for being here. And Olga, thanks for being here. What a great show. Thank
Thank
you at
you.
home for watching. And we shall see you again next week on the five stack on Substack. And good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.